The bank statement sat heavily in my hands as I watched Michael pack his expensive suits into a designer suitcase. $250,000 transferred out in one clean sweep. 15 years of our shared savings gone with just a few clicks on his phone. "You don't need to look so shocked, Sarah," he said, not even glancing my way as he folded another silk tie. "You had to know this was coming. A man of my caliber needs someone younger, more vibrant. You understand, right? My name is Sarah Mitchell, and at 42, I was watching my husband of 17 years pack up his life while explaining why his 26-year-old pregnant mistress deserved our savings more than I did. Of course," I replied softly, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "I completely understand." Michael finally turned to look at me, suspicion flickering across his face. He'd expected tears, screaming, maybe even physical violence. My calm acceptance clearly unnerved him. "Well, good," he said, straightening his collar in the mirror, a nervous habit he'd had since we first met. "Jessica and I will need that money for the baby. A fresh start." Jessica. His secretary. How cliché. What Michael didn't know was that I'd known about them for months. About the baby. About the apartment he'd secretly leased in her name. About all of it. I discovered the first clue 6 months ago while doing our taxes. A strange charge from a jewelry store I didn't recognize. The receipt, which I found in his desk drawer, was for a diamond tennis bracelet, not exactly the kind of gift you give your secretary for Administrative Professionals Day. That discovery led me down a rabbit hole of investigation. Credit card statements, phone records, bank transfers, each piece of evidence carefully documented and stored away. Not in our house, of course. No, everything was safely tucked away in my private office at the university where I taught forensic accounting. Yes, that's right. My husband, the brilliant investment banker, had been hiding his affair from a woman who taught others how to uncover financial fraud for a living. "I've arranged for the divorce papers to be delivered tomorrow," Michael continued, zipping up his suitcase. "My lawyer assures me it will be straightforward. Clean break, no messy emotions." I nodded, still clutching the bank statement. "Very efficient." He paused at the bedroom door, frowning slightly. "You're taking this, well, better than I expected." "What did you expect, Michael?" "I don't know. More? Resistance?" "You've always been so," he waved his hand vaguely, "dependent." I had to bite back a laugh. Dependent? He actually believed that. Believed that the woman who put herself through graduate school while working 2 jobs, who'd built a respected career in academia, who'd been managing both our finances since day one, was dependent on him. But that was Michael. He saw what he wanted to see. And for years, I let him see exactly what I wanted him to see. "Will you be staying with Jessica tonight?" I asked, already knowing the answer. The tracker I placed on his car months ago would confirm it anyway. Yes, no point in dragging this out. He checked his Rolex, the one I'd given him for our 10th anniversary. "I'll send movers for the rest of my things next week." As he walked out of our bedroom for the last time, I waited until I heard the front door close, his car start up, and the sound of tires on gravel fade away. Only then did I allow myself to smile. I pulled out my phone and sent a single text to Jennifer, my lawyer. He took the bait. Time for phase 2. Jennifer's response was immediate. "Everything's ready. He won't know what hit him." I walked to my home office, not the casual desk in the living room where I graded papers, but my real office, hidden behind a false wall in the basement. Michael had never known about this room. He'd never bothered to learn anything about the house's architecture or the renovations I'd managed while he was busy climbing the corporate ladder. The space was small but efficient, filled with computer monitors, filing cabinets, and most importantly, evidence. 6 months of careful documentation spread across multiple boards. Financial records, surveillance photos, recordings of conversations. A paper trail that would make any forensic accountant proud. But the real prize was on the central monitor, a series of bank transfers that Michael thought he'd hidden cleverly through a maze of shell companies and offshore accounts. Nearly $2 million siphoned from his investment clients over the past 3 years. What he didn't know was that every transfer, every account, every dirty dollar had been tracked, documented, and reported to the SEC. Anonymously, of course. The investigation was already underway. They were just waiting for one final piece of evidence. That $250,000 he just transferred from our joint account, it wasn't going to Jessica's account like he thought. Thanks to some careful manipulation of routing numbers, child's play for someone with my expertise, that money was about to trigger a series of transactions that would expose his entire operation. I sat down at my desk and began typing, activating the programs I prepared months ago. As lines of code scrolled across my screen, I thought about all the times Michael had patronizingly explained basic financial concepts to me at dinner parties. All the times he dismissed my career as cute or a nice hobby. My phone buzzed. Another text from Jennifer. SEC just got the alert. They're moving in tomorrow morning. Perfect timing. The divorce papers would be delivered right after the FBI finished their raid on his office. I leaned back in my chair, allowing myself a moment of satisfaction. Michael thought he was starting a new life with his young mistress and our savings. Instead, he was about to learn a very expensive lesson about underestimating your wife, especially when that wife specializes in following the money. The next morning, I sat in my university office, calmly grading papers while waiting for the show to begin. My students were struggling with the concept of digital forensic trails. Ironic, considering what was about to unfold across town. At precisely 9:47 a.m., my phone lit up with a news alert. FBI raids Premier Investment Group, CEO Michael Mitchell in custody. Right on schedule. Within minutes, my phone was buzzing with texts and calls. I ignored most of them, but answered when Jennifer's name flashed across the screen. "It's beautiful," she said, not bothering with hello. "You should see him trying to explain why that $250,000 transfer led straight to his offshore accounts. He's completely unraveling." I switched my phone to speaker and pulled up the local news live stream on my computer. There was Michael being led out of his office in handcuffs, his perfectly pressed suit wrinkled, his carefully styled hair disheveled. The cameras caught his expression perfectly, a mix of confusion, anger, and dawning horror. "Has he figured it out yet?" I asked, watching him scan the crowd of reporters. "Not yet," Jennifer replied, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "But he will when the divorce papers arrive in about 3 minutes. I timed everything carefully. The FBI raid would shake him, but the divorce papers, those would break him. Because unlike the simple, clean settlement he planned, these papers detailed every aspect of his fraud, his affair, and most importantly, his attempt to hide assets before filing for divorce." "How's Jessica taking the news?" I asked, though I already knew. My sources had confirmed she'd been watching the raid livestream too, from the comfort of the apartment Michael had rented for her. "Left the apartment 10 minutes ago with 3 suitcases and all the jewelry he bought her, including that tennis bracelet that started this whole thing." Jennifer paused. "Want to guess where she's going?" "Straight to her lawyer to make a deal with the FBI. Bingo. Turns out she's been keeping her own records. Smart girl." I smiled, thinking about the anonymous email Jessica had received last week, detailing exactly what kind of evidence would be most valuable to federal prosecutors. Sometimes the best moves were the ones your opponent never saw coming. My office phone rang, the university president's office. No doubt they'd seen the news and wanted to discuss my position given the scandal. I let it go to voicemail. They'd soon learn that I'd already submitted my resignation, effective immediately. After all, I had other plans. "The divorce papers should have arrived," I said, checking my watch. "Any response?" Jennifer's laugh crackled through the speaker. "Oh yes. His lawyer just called me, practically hyperventilating. Apparently, Michael's demanding to know, and I quote, 'How the hell did she know all of this?'" I switched tabs on my browser, pulling up the offshore account I'd been monitoring. Just as I predicted, the $250,000 Michael had transferred yesterday had triggered a cascade of automatic transactions, each one exposing another layer of his fraud. By trying to hide our savings from me, he'd unknowingly provided the SEC with a roadmap to every illegal deal he'd ever made. "The FBI agent in charge wants to talk to you," Jennifer continued. "They're impressed with the documentation you provided. Said it's the most thorough evidence package they've ever received." "I'm sure they are," I replied, thinking of the hundreds of hours I'd spent tracking Michael's financial movements. "But I think I'll let them handle it from here. I have a flight to catch." Running away? Strategic retreat. I have a visiting professor position lined up at Oxford, been planning it for months. I glanced at my packed bags sitting by the door. Seemed like a good time for a change of scenery. Jennifer was quiet for a moment. He really had no idea, did he? About any of it? About who you really are? No, I said softly, remembering all the times Michael had dismissed my work, my intelligence, my capabilities. He saw what he wanted to see. A quiet, dependable wife who handled the household accounts and taught basic accounting to college students. He never bothered to learn what I actually taught. Financial forensics and fraud detection, Jennifer said with a laugh. God, the irony. Speaking of which, I pulled up another window on my computer. His initial court appearance should be starting soon. Want to watch? Wouldn't miss it. But Sarah, what about the money? The $250,000 he took. I allowed myself a small smile. Oh, that was never our money. That account was just for show, part of the trap. Our real savings, I glanced at my phone, checking another account balance, are quite safe and significantly larger. You really did think of everything. Had to. When you're married to a financial criminal, you learn to plan ahead. Oxford in autumn was exactly what I needed. The ancient stones, the quiet libraries, the distance from everything that had happened. I'd been here 3 months when the first email arrived from Jennifer. Guilty on all counts, it read. 15 years minimum. Jessica turned state's evidence. Apparently she'd been documenting everything since the affair began. Smart girl, like you said, but not smart enough to realize she was just another pawn in his game. I sat in my new office, overlooking the college quad, and felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. Not for Michael, he'd made his choices. But for the life I'd thought we had, the years I'd spent playing a role to catch him in his own trap. The second email came a week later, this one from the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. They wanted to consult with me on other cases. My methods for tracking Michael's fraud had impressed them, particularly the way I'd used his own arrogance against him. Your expertise would be invaluable, they wrote, particularly in cases involving long-term financial deception. I declined politely. I had other plans. The media circus back home had finally died down. Michael's face was no longer splashed across the financial news, replaced by newer scandals, fresher frauds. But his case had become required reading in several forensic accounting programs, including my own. The Mitchell methodology, they called it, the art of letting your target think they're winning until it's too late. I was grading papers one evening when my phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. Sarah? The voice was hesitant, changed. It's Jessica. I sat back in my chair, watching the sun set over the Oxford spires. Hello, Jessica. I was wondering if you'd call. How? She paused, gathering courage. How long did you know? About everything. From the beginning, I replied truthfully. The bracelet was sloppy of him. After that, it was just a matter of watching and waiting. She was quiet for a moment. The anonymous tip about what evidence to keep. That was you, wasn't it? You deserved a chance to protect yourself. He was using you just like he used everyone else. I lost the baby, she said suddenly. Not that there ever really was one. Just another lie to trap him. She laughed bitterly. I thought I was so clever, you know. The young secretary, seducing a wealthy boss. But you were the clever one. I thought about Michael, sitting in his prison cell, probably still trying to figure out exactly how his perfect plan had unraveled. We all have choices, Jessica. He made his. You made yours. I made mine. After I hung up, I opened my laptop and checked a specific account, one that Michael had never known about. The balance made me smile. While he'd been siphonning money from his clients, I'd been quietly building my own investment portfolio. Legitimately, carefully, successfully. The irony would have killed him. A knock at my office door interrupted my thoughts. It was Professor Harrison, head of the department. Sarah, sorry to disturb you, but I wanted to discuss your proposal for the new financial crimes curriculum. The board is very interested, especially given your unique perspective on the subject. I smiled, gathering my materials. The course I designed was comprehensive, covering everything from digital forensics to psychological profiling of white-collar criminals. Every case study was real, including one very personal example. You know, Harrison said as we walked to the meeting, some of the board members were concerned about your connection to the Mitchell case. Worried it might be too controversial. And what did you tell them? That they were missing the point entirely. Your experience doesn't compromise the course. It elevates it. You're not just teaching theory, you're teaching reality. The board meeting went exactly as I'd expected. My curriculum was approved unanimously. Starting next semester, I would be training a new generation of forensic accountants, teaching them not just to follow the money, but to understand the psychology behind financial crimes. That evening, I received one final email from Jennifer. She'd attached a photo, Michael's face on a new billboard outside the SEC headquarters in Washington. Financial FRAVD steroids LIVs, it warned. Ori PLRT siwas paseas activity. I had to laugh at that. Michael had finally achieved the fame he always wanted, just not quite the way he planned. The next morning, I stood before my class, looking at the eager faces of future forensic accountants. On the screen behind me was the first slide of my presentation, The Art of Financial Deception, a case study. Today, we're going to learn about a man who thought he was smarter than everyone else. A man who believed that money could buy him anything, including immunity from consequences. But most importantly, we're going to learn about the fatal flaw that brings down most financial criminals: underestimating your opponent. As I launched into the lecture, I thought about that day in our bedroom, watching Michael pack his bags, so confident in his superiority. He'd never once considered that his quiet, dependable wife might be capable of bringing down his entire empire. That was his mistake, one of many. The students were riveted as I detailed the methodology, the careful documentation, the strategic patience required to expose long-term fraud. None of them knew they were learning from the architect of Michael's downfall. To them, I was just Professor Mitchell, an expert in financial forensics. And that's exactly how I wanted it, because sometimes the best revenge isn't just about winning. It's about using your victory to prevent others from suffering the same fate. Every student I teach, every case I consult on, every fraud we uncover. That's my real legacy. Michael wanted to be remembered as a brilliant financier. Instead, he'll be remembered as a cautionary tale, a case study in hubris and deception. And me, I'm exactly who I've always been, just not who he thought I was. That's the final lesson I teach my students. The most dangerous opponent isn't the one who shows their hand. It's the one who waits patiently, watching, learning, and planning until the perfect moment to reveal the truth. Some call it justice. Some call it revenge. I call it forensic accounting.